Does he ask you for advice all the time? Would he call you? What I do wrong, what I do right, and stuff like that.
Oh, he calls me sometimes at halftime.
So what was the weirdest call? Do you remember him calling you during the game?
I think the weirdest call he had was his game against Duke last year.
He had a great game. I remember. I
And
won.
I'm in the stands. He's like, "What can I do better?" I'm like, "You can keep running." He's like, "Ugh." So like
But
I tell
he
all
had a great game now, right? I mean,
he had an incredible game, but I tell all athletes, especially football players, I'm like, believe it or not, if you're running and you're on camera, people see you. It's so you're more likely or not you're going to make a play. You're going to be near the play. So run. Like don't just kind of see the play happening and start jogging because the play is happening away from you or on the other side of the field. Run to try to get into the play. You never know what's going to happen. You keep running, good things will keep happening, and that's kind of one of the secrets to his game. And he runs constantly, gets himself in position to make a lot of plays. If the ball breaks out and the linebackers are blocked and he's changing direction, the guy's going to get tackled if he's anywhere near him. So like it's a great thing.
Jay Horowitz and other dishes the main conversations with Howard Cross, 13-year New York Giant, Super Bowl champion, 25, and since 2007 been a part of the New York Giants radio broadcasting crew with Bob Papa and Carl Banks. And in this the 100th year of Giants football, Howard was voted as one of the top 100 players to ever play for the Giants. Howard, how does it make you feel? Elite franchise to be among the best that ever played.
It's really cool. I feel like more of a fan favorite since I played for so many years. I thought it was a lot of fun. Played in a couple Super Bowls. We won a Super Bowl. It met a lot of great guys, built a lot of great relationships, two incredible families that own the team. It's pretty cool if you think about how many players, how many Hall of Famers. I think it's like 5,000 or more players, and you're being selected as one of the 100. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm a gigantic Giant fan. I been season tickets at 58. I love Notre Dame. You have special ties to Notre Dame. Your son, Howard, he's a nose tackle. How cool it
Yeah,
could be this year, Howard? New Jersey Navy. The Irish play twice in October. They play Navy at the Meadowlands, and in November they play Army in Yankee Stadium. How cool is that could be for your family to see your son play up close?
it's gonna be great. All of his cousins are around, so he'll get to be spend some time with them. All of his high school buddies that are in the area will be trying to figure out how to get to the game. So and I got a ton of people in the city that are like, oh, we're gonna tailgate. You're gonna have a great time. So it's gonna be really nice for him. He'll hopefully he'll be able to focus on the game because there'll be so many people grabbing and pulling at him on that week.
How many times have you been able to go out to Notre Dame with your schedule, Howard, to see him play?
I try to get out there at least once or twice a year. I probably catch more games on the road because that's kind of where our seasons match up.
Yeah.
In the last couple of years, we've been on the West Coast a few times, so it's a little harder to get from wherever you are on the West Coast to South Bend because there's not a lot of direct flights to South Bend.
Yeah, I've been here a couple of times and I love the place. Are you a nervous father watching the game? Is it harder for you to play or to watch?
It's more exciting to watch him play, see him have success, listen to his his self commentary after the game, and try to keep him level headed about every play. You're not going to make every play of the game. If you did, you'd be like a superhero or something. So let that part go, because in his mind he thinks he can make every play. I'm like, the defense isn't designed that way, but it'd be great if you did. But the defense is definitely not designed that way.
I had the opportunity to meet Marcus Freeman a couple of times. Very imposing guy. He's with it. We've got 6 kids, and I think he gets all parts of coaching and family life together. Very impressive coach.
Hey, he's a great dude. Young guy, got a great young family, bringing them up, and they're being in proximity to the school and being right there, kind of on campus. It makes his life a lot better for him. It's the only time I probably think he's stressed out is probably when he's on the recruiting trail. But you recruit year round now with the transfer portal and everything that's going on. So that's a little interesting. But I think that he's kind of young enough, hip enough to understand what's happening with college athletes, these young guys, and trying to stay in front of them.
He's got a great sense of humor. I did a podcast with him about a year ago when he was on a press tour here. I said, with watching Rudy, part of the requirements for getting a job, he kind of laughed. He said, I must have seen Rudy 112 times, you know.
That's funny. That's
Yeah,
real funny.
Well, Mark, let me before I move on to the Giants, does he ask you for advice all the time? Would he call you? What I do wrong, what I do right, and stuff like that?
Oh, he calls me sometimes at halftime to ask what's going on.
Really?
So he's just really into the game. The kids today have, depending on what your kids are and where they came from. My son, has been blessed with a really good life. He's traveled, he's done a lot of things, so he kind of gets hard on himself on things that he wants to get done. He's kind of like wants to be a perfectionist, and I keep explaining to him, it's kind of like a golf swing. Like, you never perfect it. You just hope that you have some really good days with it. He goes like, everything's not like golf, Dad. I'm like, it kind of is. So I keep, impressing upon him, just, always be grateful, be thankful, be happy, good times, bad times. Like, you didn't have a bad moment. You had a teaching moment. So what do you learn from this moment so you can get yourself better?
How look at your career. I was, again, I go back to the 50s. One stat I was amazed at in the history of the Giants, Eli Manning played in 236 games, Strahan 216, and you're third in that list with 207. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool for a tight end. 207 games. Only 3 Giants have played over as many games as you guys.
Yeah, I mean, between the three of us, we played a lot of games. I can remember Strahan playing like a couple more years. Like, hey, you can play more games than I did. He goes like, I'm never going to be around that long, and he actually was. And Eli was just a consummate, never missing a game, always showed up. It was pretty cool to watch Eli, go through that great record of games and that great streak.
Yeah, how many nagging injuries did you remember playing through?
You play through everything. It's football. You have broken hands, broken ribs, dislocated shoulders. That's just the way we played back then. We played a little differently. We probably paying for it a lot more now these days with our bodies, but back then you played a little differently. You didn't take care of your body, as like Mickey Mouse said. If you know you're going to live this long, you would take better care of yourself. So you just play through everything. Knee injuries, if they could wrap it up and you could keep going, you would just keep going. The world's, like I said, the world's greatly different in that aspect. I think the kids today do take better care of themselves when they're playing. They are a lot safer. And again, we weren't trying to hurt or mangle or demean each other. It was just the nature of the game.
So I was at the Super Bowl 25. So I was sitting next to my friend Charlie when Scott Norwood lines up for the 48-yard kick. And I remember saying to him, you know what? Even if he makes it, it still was a great year for the Giants. Well, I was lying, of course, but I couldn't tell. I was in the far end zone where the kick was. Where were you when the kick was made?
I was on the sideline. Didn't think Norwood was going to make it, or there was a low percentage chance he was going to make it. Unlike the kids of today who are kicking, like a 50-yarder is like a field goal for them.
It's a given, right? I mean,
it's like an extra point. So it's like really crazy how long these kids have gotten kicking. I think they're probably more into soccer and they're used to it more, and they're bigger bodied people too. So ball flies a lot farther. So back then, kicks over 45 yards were, questionable. And he had like a 25% chance or a 30% chance of making it, not missing it from that distance off of grass. So they were trying to keep him beyond his range and to a nervous range, and they did.
Remember back that game, the Giants held the ball for 40 minutes out of 60, and the drive, like almost a 10-minute drive, seemed like O.J. Ames carried every play and just dominated the whole fourth quarter or most of the second half. 40 minutes out of 60 minutes to hold the ball is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the game plan. Far be it for me to say that Kelly and that offense that they were running was not incredible. They had thrown up like 31 points or something against the Raiders just the week before. They could score, and they could score big. They had great receivers, 2 guys in the Hall of Fame. They had a great tight end, the running back, of course, Hall of Famer. So they had a whole offense of Hall of Famers over there. So just to find a way to slow them down, to keep them off the field. And the only way you could slow them down was basically keep the receivers kind of like tied up a lot and make sure the offense held onto the ball. If we didn't hold onto the ball and didn't keep moving it for that long and kind of like going this slow and steady down the field, we would have never had a chance at that game.
I remember about the atmosphere. Whitney Houston singing the national anthem, the Gulf Coast War. I mean, people didn't. It was almost like going forward. Was it when 9/11 they get a bomb the stadium? I mean, what do you remember about the atmosphere of the game? The
Well, at that time in my life, I don't remember, like, I knew of Vietnam. You'd read about other wars, but I didn't know of our country ever being in a real conflict, or we were never, quote unquote, at odds. It wasn't as public as it is today. The news cycle was kind of 24 hours, but not really 24 hours. And now with Instagram, Twitter, or X, and everything else, you kind of see stuff happening as it's happening all the time. So back then, it was a big thing that we were going to a war. It was a big thing that we were going to be in a conflict. That our soldiers were going to be publicly um, doing something that we didn't know what was going to happen, and it was a scary moment. And to have two teams that were red, white, and blue based be at the Super Bowl, to have Whitney Houston deliver that
That
national
was
anthem,
great. I remember it
yeah,
was great.
that won a Grammy, it just meant a lot. I mean, I can remember that was like the first time in my life that I was watching guys walk around with M16s and stuff around our hotel for protection. I'm like, this is we're
Yeah.
really going to go to war. So this was like, it was really, overwhelming for me at that young age of 20, 21, to see all that and trying to reconcile all of that as we were trying to play a game when all this was going on.
How do you primarily known as a blocker? Is that fair? But still, 17 touchdowns, over 200 receptions, over 2,000 yards. I mean, for a 6 round draft pick, you made a great career for yourself.
I did. I did. I always tell people, like, when you're playing, don't let anybody define you. If you have something you do it great, do it excellent. Then the thing that you need to work on, or things that they don't give you credit for, try to make that better. So I would work on my blocking and my techniques all the time, and then I would like to spend the rest of the time at the jugs machine making catches every day. So it's one of those things. If they need you, they'll throw the ball to you. If not, just keep the quarterback upright and make sure that be a part of that process. So a lot of catches were little dinks and dunks because I was popping out late because nobody was open at that moment. So those kind of things kind of build up. It was some down the field throws and some long runs and some catches, but you just did what they wanted you to do, and you're trying to stay in the mode. I
Is
think there was always a quote unquote receiving tight end on the team when I was with the team.
is there any of the touchdowns anyone stands out? Howard, anyone of the 17 is more memorable than the other?
No, I barely even remember the fact you're telling me I had 17 touchdowns. It's
Yeah,
kind of funny. I think Phil Simms was asking me the other day, "Do you remember any of your stats?" I'm like,
yeah.
"No, I don't." I
So,
just like,
so Phil is I he joined the Giants as an ambassador. What I do, I deal with the alumni. We have here at we have Keith, we have Mookie Wilson, David Wright, Mike Piazza, ambassadors. I get Phil is back more in the Giants fold now as an ambassador.
Mhm.
How is it being reunited with two teammates and when you did the TV game the other day?
We see each other frequently. It's always great, but to, be able to do something in the booth with him and be able to talk to him, and the back and forth banter, it's pretty cool. A great guy, real student of the game, has been for, like, man, over 30 plus years, which is really cool. And that's as a professional. So just now, being able to work with him, you have like you're not in awe, but you're like in like, wow, this is like one of the legends of calling football. He was doing it for so long, and has been doing it for so long. It's just really cool to be working with him and listen to how he watches game and what he thinks about it.
Well, Howard, how has it been adjusting? Since '07, the sidelines. It's not almost the best view in the house because you're on the sidelines. How is it for you to get a view of the game? Do you have a strategy? Do you move back and forth? I mean, what do you when a game progresses? What do your plan of attack?
Well, you try to like get out because I'm not really a sideline reporter. I'm kind of doing more like analytics,
Right.
analyzing the game and trying to tell them what I'm seeing and why. I try to put myself in a position if it's the offense running the ball, or if the offense is with the ball, you try to get to a position where at first you're watching kind of from almost behind them to see if if anybody's coming through, if they're breaking through or something. Then you start looking to see at the side, like looking down the line to see if they're penetrating going forward, or if the defense is penetrating. And then you start watching the secondary to see like if the receivers are able to get open when they're actually running the ball down or passing the ball down the field, or even are they helping out in the run game. So you can see a lot of the different things that's happened, and you'll know exactly. Okay, if the guard is getting beat, if they're catching them with the twist, if they're there's stunts that are affecting them, we'll say it on the air and say like, hey, look, watch this right here, guys. This is what's happening. Watch this ET twist on the outside. Then you explain what the twist is, and then they explain it again. Because when you're doing it on the radio and you're doing it from the sideline, you have to talk a lot more about exactly what you're seeing, so that when the fans that are hopefully simulcast watching it and listening to us on the radio, but if they're not listening to the radio, you're trying to paint a picture so they can see it really clearly.
You and Carl and Bob have been together a long time, so you kind of play with each other. You have a good thing going among the three of you guys.
Yeah, it's a great thing. Bob and Carl are doing, calling the play-by-play and the color of the game. So it's interesting to see what they're looking at and because they're looking down on the game. I'm looking at the game from the ground. So, sometimes I'll say something and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, you're right," and because they'll have a second look from the camera. My second look, if I'm lucky, is looking up at the big screen.
How was it to play for Parcells?
It was difficult. It was back then. Bill was a rough, tough kind of guy, and that was just the way that they did football back then. He's a lot more fun to be around now that we're retired and we're able to hang out from time to time and see each other. But back then, it was like, man, he was always trying to push your buttons, trying to figure out a way to get more out of you. Because he says like, I know that you think you're great, but I think there's a level that you haven't even looked at yet. Let's go. He's trying to find ways to motivate you, and he would, like I said, try to push your buttons and keep it moving at all times.
It had to be exciting to work the Giants Super Bowls from the sideline too. That was a pretty good run in 2000s, the two Super Bowl games.
Yeah, it's really exciting to be there, watching them playing these games in Arizona and in Indy, to be a part of, like, I think to be a part of exactly what they were doing at that moment was great. Traveling with the team, listening to the scouting reports, listening to what they thought about, and watching them practice, trying to get ready for these games, and watching the guys like kind of like build these bonds and get prepared to take on two pretty good teams. They did a great job.
Yeah, it was. Hey, back to your son for a second. How did he escape? You went to Alabama. How did he escape Alabama? You got a twin daughters in Alabama.
Yeah, she went to Alabama, graduated. She works down south in Miami at a hedge fund, so she's having a good life. How did he escape Alabama? I just said like I thought she was going to go to Cal Berkeley or Stanford or Pepperdine or somewhere on the West Coast, because that's all the schools that she applied to, and that's all the schools they wrote back to her, and she was excited. And then one of my alumni friends asked my daughter to go down for a visit at Alabama, and they rolled out the red carpet for her, as a academic scholarship person, and they got after her, and she's like, I think I want to go to school here. Now Howard, on the other hand, he wants to kind of be a football player, but he wants to get his degree at the same time. And I explained to him uh, very early on, I'm like, you're a really good player. And he says, you don't think I could play at Alabama? I said, I think you could play at Alabama. I said, but let's look at let me give you some thoughts before you do this. I said, how was it when we went to Europe? Oh, we loved it. It was great. Italy was awesome. So how was it when we went to the Bahamas or whatever island we were on? He goes, loved it. That's great. I said, no, you have been to places in the world. You've experienced really cool things. You got great things because of your family and our blessings that we've had. I said, the kids at Alabama, and not all of the kids, But a lot of the kids at Alabama are going to Alabama to make their lives better so they can do some of the things that you've already done. I'm like, I'm like, you have to think about that when you're doing it. I said, Coach Saban was one of the greatest coaches, if not the greatest coach in the world. And I believe that if you go there, you're going to find a new level of coaching. So you have to be prepared for it. I said, now, let's call it you're 30 years old, you're not playing football. What are you going to do? Well, I don't know. This is him as a kid. I'm like, so wouldn't it be nice if there were people asking you to come work for them? They were going to give you a job automatically just because of the school maybe you went to. He goes, like, what? I'm like, yeah, if you go like to Stanford, if you go to Notre Dame, if you go to Duke, if you go to Vanderbilt, if you go to Northwestern, these schools have a reputation of academics and an alumni base that really, it really looks good on a resume. And he was like, so I'm not going to Alabama. Like, I said, I really want you to take a look at it. I said, our dream schools would be Harvard, Princeton. And he goes like, really? I'm like, I'm telling you, son, this is something you should really, really consider. And after careful consideration, he thought about it. He was like, maybe you're right. And then I had, buddies that went to Notre Dame that were riding him constantly about Notre Dame. And he's like, well, Notre Dame is one of my dream schools. If they ever offer me, and like he said it out loud, and the next week we were out in Notre Dame because they had called us for a visit.
Did the coach? Would you go? We went on this visit with him, Howard. They know who you were. Did they ask you questions on how did they treat you going out with his son? And we know what your background. Were there any different questions? Any different or?
I just stepped out of the way. It was all about him all the time. It was not about, oh, it was so nice to meet Howard Cross. The third, the junior, like the third is the guy you want to see. I'm just here as I'm his valet. And he was very, like, as a high ranking recruit, he got special treatment at every school, not because of me, just because of his accomplishments alone. And he recognized it, and it made a big difference to him.
How where do you think he projects in the NFL? I mean, is nose tap? I mean, where do you think he projects?
He's
You know,
he's probably a natural three technique. I think they play him at nose tackle at Notre Dame because I mean I like all the kids that are there, but he's probably one of the few kids that can hold up against a double team. And if that's the style of defense that they're running, they're Riley Mills, big kid. I like Riley. But that would be the kid that you would think would be in the nose tackle, and Howard be the three technique, but they have it in reverse. So I think that when he gets to the NFL, if he's blessed enough to make a team, they're going to slide him over in that gap and give him a chance to show that speed and quickness, and that's going to be where he'll be able to make his a name for himself if he's able to get to the league.
you mentioned he calls you during the game sometime. During the '86 World Series, Keith Hernandez's brother Gary, he's sitting in the
Mm-hmm.
stand, and Keith used to call him after each at bat to see how did I do. So what
That's
was the weirdest call? Do you remember him calling you during the game? Do you remember any specific game where a lot of
uh,
them?
I think the weirdest call he had was his game against Duke last year.
He had a great game. I remember. I
And
won.
I'm in the stands. He's like, "What can I do better?" I'm like, "You can keep running." He's like, "Ugh." So like
But
I tell
he had a great game now, right? I mean,
he had an incredible game. But I tell all athletes, especially football players, I'm like, believe it or not, if you're running and you're on camera, people see you. It's so you're more likely or not you're going to make a play. You're going to be near the play. So run. Like don't just kind of see the play happening and start jogging because the play is happening away from you or on the other side of the field. Run to try to get into the play. You never know what's going to happen. You keep running, good things will keep happening, and that's kind of one of the secrets to his game. And he runs constantly, gets himself in position to make a lot of plays. If the ball breaks out and the linebackers are blocked and he's changing direction, the guy's going to get tackled if he's anywhere near him. So like it's a great thing.
so how you think you'll be at both local games in the Army Navy games in the schedule permits?
I think because of the way our travel is this year, I should be able to be at both games because of I think we play like Pittsburgh, which is like 6 hours away. Even if I couldn't get a flight, I could jump in a car after the game and just drive down. And I don't know where the next game is when we play at Yankee Stadium, but I think it's not far, or we're coming off of a bye or something. So yeah, it kind of worked out great that I'll be able to pop into these games that are local.
You know why I became a Notre Dame? Because of the song. I love the song. I love
Okay.
the film, the Rockney film. We had a win one for the Gippers, and that got me hooked. So, it's in person. My two favorite team, the Giants, college teams, Notre Dame. Listen, all
Okay.
the best to the Giants, Howard, you're your son, and I really appreciate your time, and maybe I'll run into you someday. Okay.
I look forward to it, man. You have a great one.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. Thank you, my friend.
No problem.
Bye. 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 Bye.